Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a relatively short video, I hope, that I would like to bring to you to discuss one or two things, connect one or two dots, and bring you one or two announcements. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope you've all got through your weekend in one piece, and I hope you're all getting into the week okay. I am, as far as I can see. So, won't count my chickens just yet, but yeah, I'm in a good spot at the moment, so I shan't complain. Absolutely not. Cracking on with what I was going to talk to you about. So I made a couple of notes this time because I've got one of those days where my retaining of information is very short-lived. Certainly, short-term memory seems to be suffering quite a bit recently, I have to admit. It's funny because I can remember exactly where I was in certain moments when I was 7 or 11, or when I hear a song, it takes me straight back to wherever I was, and goodness knows how old I was or whatever, no problem at all. But yet, tell me your name, and 2 minutes later I'll forget. It's weird. Anyway, that's just a quick disclaimer, just in case you see me looking over every now and then. That's why I'm doing it. It's just to aid me, remind me what not to forget to talk about. Anyway, so cracking on. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you really was about the topic of research in general. I put out a few videos recently. One was on banners on bridges, on the Bournemouth Bridge, because I wanted to just document for a few minutes what the chaps and chapesses there were getting up to. And they were doing what we do in the vigil, really, in Bournemouth Gardens, and that is, but I mean, in terms of numbers, far more effectively because of the masses of people passing those banners, of course, on the motorway bridge. But the message being the same, which is that, the facts are there for all to see. Things like, for example, a cashless society is in no way, shape or form a good idea at all. All you have to do is give it a bit of thought. It's not a rebellious way of thinking or a conspiratorial sort of angle. It's a basic fact. If you take cash out of society and everything goes digital, then people's lives will be even more controlled, almost totally then, because you don't even have that snippet of freedom, perceived freedom, by way of a few quid in your pocket, cash, right? Of course, there are scenarios that I don't even want to address here now that could be absolutely horrific if you really needed something on a Friday after work and your only chance of getting it is that Friday evening, and then you've got a whole weekend and you have to wait till Monday, and it's all digital, and you've been flagged for something somewhere, and you don't gain entry to, let's say, it could be a chemist, and you might need some important medication or whatever the case may be. I mean, a lot of people could be in a lot of trouble. That's just one example of how, you can hamstring a large portion of the population, and have them even more on their knees than they already are. So that they were the sort of messages that were sort of, we're all in this together kind of thing, because that is exactly what we are, all in this together, whether you agree with each other's viewpoints or not. The fact of the matter is that whatever's going on is for the benefit of whoever's perpetrating it, at the expense of all of us here on ground level, all of us, so that is the aspect of those messages that I like, because I don't see it as an us versus someone else within society kind of thing. It's just trying to raise awareness, remind people that, come on, think about this, think about the consequences and all the rest of it, and try and urge people to, use their own discernment. Really, that's not because we believe people are too stupid to do so. It's just that I also fall foul of that, and that is, I get out of the habit of asking questions. You are allowed to. There's nothing that says anything anywhere that you are to trust anything that's written down by somebody else, or that you are to do what you're told in a certain situation without at least figuring it out for yourself whether it's a correct thing to do or not. I mean, there is a right and wrong, and all that, right? And I think, many of us are still left bamboozled with what's happened and still can't make head or tails of it. And I'm trying to contribute to helping people understand and to see it for what it is and not for what you've been told. Excuse me. That takes a bit of practice getting into that mindset. It's something that you possess as a kid, but it gets drilled out of you by the time you leave school. You know, we all know children ask all the time. Well, I encourage that. Never stop asking. And if you're not satisfied, keep asking. But that gets drilled out of you at school, and by the time you hit 15, 16 and you leave school, some people leave earlier, some people go on to higher education, where the indoctrinated then gets a seal of approval that you can hang up on your corridor wall. You know, it's too late then. So then you're out in your working life, aren't you? And then you're busy with whatever your working life makes you busy with, which is exactly what the purpose of the system is. It's not about money, it's much more than that. But money is the main tool that's used, isn't it? It's the main mechanism that controls us and keeps us in this sort of enslaved, well, it is not sort of, enslavement. You know, now we all know that, and we all understand that we have to crack on with life and all the rest of it, but that does not mean to say that you have to sit there in the corner and take it all the time, right? And there are certain situations where you are well within your rights, and I don't mean that in any legal way, I mean that in an absolute humane kind of natural sort of way, to question or stand up and say, well, actually, that doesn't add up for me, so no, I'm not going to do that. Where has that gone with people? And that also includes responding to, and this is the point I was going to get to, things like videos or whatever. I've posted a couple of things recently on Facebook, for example, and I've also commented on other people's posts as well, because there are things, you know, it's how people go about these conversations that is at times quite disturbing, very aggressive, very belittling, humiliating at times, condescending most certainly, you know, and I hate to say it, but the people who I have the biggest problems with, if I call it people in terms of an area of conversation that becomes the trickiest, are, funny enough, the religious aspect of stuff, which in my opinion is just part of the whole control system. Religion is the same as any other thing that's been used to separate, divide, and all the rest of it for our purposes on ground level. But they are the trickiest conversations I have, because I've come to the conclusion now that it's all nonsense. All of it is total nonsense, which is why I look at the old world stuff and the hidden history that surrounds us. I think that's what gives the game away. Our old buildings and our old infrastructure and constructions that are there to see in every town and every village and every city that I've ever been to. And I'm not as well traveled as some, but I've been to a lot of countries. But, you know, everywhere I've been, it's been the same. You know, buildings going deep in the ground levels clearly having come up, churches clearly not having been built as churches originally, you know, etc., etc. A whole lot of repurposement has been going on over the past few hundred years. I would whittle that down to 200 or so years, so around about the birth of industrialization, if you like, the 1800s, when everything starts to become invented, including photography in the 1830s. Yeah, so once you kind of look at the hidden history stuff and the old world buildings, as I like to call them in this sense, then that puts the whole religious aspect of things on a totally different, in a totally different place for me. Couple that up with the fact that no matter what official source you go to for you to check up dates-wise, they'll all tell you roughly the same thing, and that is that literacy, so the capability to read and write, didn't exist in our societies until the mid to late 1800s, unless you were part of the absolute elite. Schools and school systems didn't happen until the 1900s. Schools perhaps a bit before, but school systems, curriculum, and everything we know today, not until the 1900s, well into the 1900s, the 20th century, after the Victorian era, which ended the turn of the 20th century and went into the so-called Georgian era. That's what we call it here. More nonsense, of course. Right? But when you add all these things together, and I'm just giving you an example now as to why I've come to a certain conclusion, then clearly the religious thing becomes null and void. Because A, you weren't reading any literature anyway before 300 years ago, that's most definitely, right? And B, there were no houses of worship because that's them. They've been repurposed, the houses of worship. And we see when we go up to them that what they call them crypts, but actually there's more to those buildings. They go deep in the ground and we're only seeing the tops of them or the upper parts of these buildings, right? That's just your churches and your cathedrals and your priories and your minsters all around the world, all supposed to have been built round about the same era by round about the same peoples in a population that was 1/8 of what we have today. Well, in fact, that's being kind, because we were supposed to have a billion population in 1900, gone up 7 billion in 123 years. How on earth that happened, I don't know. So you have to look at all the different bits of information, cross-reference your sources, and then you can come to some good conclusions, to be honest with you. And it makes total sense. It makes total sense when you look at it like that. But of course, and the reason why I'm touching on this is because the community that I kind of hang out in a little bit when we talk about critical things and stuff like that is more flat earth based. It's more about the nature of our realm and the lies that have been perpetrated to make us believe that we live somewhere where we don't, basically, for control purposes, again, But it's within that community that it becomes difficult, because you can still question the shape of the earth and not believe in a Jesus Christ, can't you? Since when is that not allowed? That's not to say one doesn't believe in creation. That's a different thing. And I've tried to make that point, but for some reason people are just totally ignoring that. And I've been called an atheist and this, that, and the other. Now that particularly doesn't really bother me, but it's who's calling you it that's the key bit, isn't it? And to those people calling me that, it has a meaning to them. Of course, I'm not an atheist, because an atheist would mean I'd validate Christianity in the first place, which I don't. Just like all other forms of worship that there are around the world. I don't subscribe to any of them. I think it's all absolute nonsense. But I do believe in a higher power. And I do believe that something created the realm in which we live. But I think that we are just another act that's on this realm. And there's been plenty of things that have been here before us. That's the way I see it. And that is just based on what I've looked at with friends. And then, of course, looked at with other content creators, talked to them about it, their findings, compared notes and all that sort of stuff. Looking at things like brick manufacturing, looking at things like machinery, first power drills, steam power at all in general, when was it ever first used, etc., etc., etc. There is a plethora, or there are a plethora of things that when you look at them a little bit more closely, they just blow all traditional ways of thinking out of the water, and that includes religious dogmas. Because that is part of the controller's portfolio, is religion. But like I say, creator, yeah, totally, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. But anyway, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but it's something that I've been sort of, and by the way, I'm not pointing this message at anyone in particular, but it's just a trend now for a few weeks that I've been experiencing, I talk to a lot of people in different sort of areas of the community, if you like, the research community, and you get quite a bit of feedback just by listening in on conversations as well. And, there seems to be more of a polarization, if you like, going on that wasn't there a few years ago. And so, whilst more people in general seem to be waking up to the idea that there's something not quite right going on, but within those research communities, there are more and more divisions going on, and there are more and more. There's more and more majoring on the minors going on, instead of just putting out the basic messages and doing what we all should be doing, which is getting out, not specifically going out to spread the message, but when you are out and about, using that opportunity to do so. I personally think it's neglectful if you don't. I think it's neglectful if you have children and you don't pass on that knowledge to your children to at least balance out the indoctrination that they're going to be subjected to for the next years. And there's not enough people getting their finger out and working hard and doing that. I'll say it how it is, right? Everywhere I look, there's laziness everywhere. You know, I get accused sometimes of being very passionate, which I think is code for we just wish you'd shut up sometimes, right? My question would be, well, where's your passion? Obviously not important enough, this thing, is it, what's going down? And like I say, you know, although I was talking about old buildings and researching in general, you know, researching meaning not just typing in something into the Google search bar, but actually going, looking, talking, experiencing if you can, you know, recording, documenting, filming, whatever, you know. But that sort of thing, although I'm talking about that, but it's all connected with the whole bigger picture, you know, old world buildings, the realm in which we live, the tightening of the, let's call it an agenda for want of a better word. So, for example, cash being taken out of our society slowly but surely, threats of new lockdowns because there's whispers going on here, there and everywhere. Then you got some war simmering in the distance. You got a death of a monarch. You got this, you got that, you got the other. It's just ongoing as well, to grind you down while that's happening, you know. But it's the awareness levels that should be at a level now whereby it really, for me personally, it's second nature to just talk to someone about it. I don't really care too much about other people's feelings around this topic anymore. I think we're beyond the point of it being a matter of urgency. You know, I met a friend very recently, yesterday in fact, and we always have these conversations. I'm just looking at the clock, sorry. And, you know, we're both on the same page. That's what's getting us sort of down at times, is the fact that you can just see what's happening, you know, and those who you used to look to, who used to do sound research, have just got stuck in that position, and there's nothing driving anybody forward anymore. It's just repeat. Whilst it's important to repeat the core arguments, it's also important to try and keep momentum up and keep the messages going out. Because like I've said before in previous videos, we don't own the airwaves. I don't own BBC. I don't have a chance to sit at that table. So the only thing we can do really is, when we're out, is talk. And if you've got kids, do it at home and all that sort of thing. You know, what else can I say to that? But yeah, so although I've gone a bit back and forth there, the religious thing, getting back to that, the division within communities, and also a point I forgot to mention earlier as well, is there is no way on earth ever of proving that any of that ever happened that's been written in so-called scriptures as well. And that's another thing that baffles me when we talk about research communities, and yet so many people fall for a story because that's all it is. There's no evidence of anything. You know? Hope is not knowledge. You know? Belief, which is hope, right? That's not knowledge. Belief is just that. I believe something. Once you get in the habit of believing things, then we're going to be in trouble. Anyway, moving on from that, I did meet up with a couple of friends a couple of days ago, which was very nice. This came off the back of a Flat Earth social that we had a little while back, where Mark Devlin came to town and spoke about some very, very interesting things to do with the entertainment industry in general, you know, Tavistock Institute and all that sort of thing, and how social conditioning has been going on right from day dot. And anyway, so a couple of people who I know from there, they met up with me and we went round Bournemouth and we had a little look at some buildings in and around the vicinity. And the you know, the passion and the enthusiasm was very prevalent. It's the way I feel about it as well. You know, because when you walk around, you see it there in front of you. It's mind blowing. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that was good. You know who you are. That was good to see us both. I enjoyed it, and we must do it again. I think we were going to do another outing soon and go to, I do believe, Salisbury, a cathedral over 800 years old, according to, in fact, the officialdom. And yet, when you look at the dwellings, just saying, you know. But anyway, that was good. And they're the sort of things that I kind of want to encourage when I talk about, for example, enthusiastically about flat earth socials and this, that, and the other. The knock-on effect of that, networking, and then also outside of those events, spending time with each other, or sharing knowledge with each other, discovering things together, brainstorming, coming to conclusions together, not coming to conclusions together, whatever. But, you know, the more the merrier, and you know, the more eyes to see, the more brains to, you know, share ideas and stuff with, and things like that, things that you might not see yourself and someone points it out to you. I think it's a really, really good thing. They're things that wouldn't happen if you were going to a cinema. What are the chances of you bumping into somebody who's like-minded, who's thinking along those terms at the moment, for example? Or if you went to the supermarket, went to a pub, or whatever. Where do people go nowadays to socialise and meet? Just in general, don't know. But so that's the importance of such an event like a Flat Earth Social. You know you're going to have like-minded people there. There are varying levels and stuff like that, you know. But nevertheless, the inclination is to look that way as opposed to buy into the mainstream. And if it enables those sorts of meets outside of the Flat Earth Social, then yeah, long may that continue. And I'd encourage anybody who feels they get on quite well or whatever to, you know, meet up and do stuff and maybe even put some videos out, or next time we get together, we can actually maybe do a video together and share our findings with people and that sort of thing. So, you know, there are lots of things you can do with that knowledge, and it doesn't have to be on YouTube either. There are plenty of other platforms that you can put that out on, and you could also maybe use it for future presentations if you were to start off meetups elsewhere, for example, and that sort of thing. You know, there are lots of avenues to explore, but it's all down to, of course, the people who are involved on ground level to want that and to then push on with a bit of drive and all the rest of it, you know. And that's kind of what I'm enthusiastic about, because times are going to be hard again soon. It's another thing that we talked about very recently, you know. Just the how can I put it? The unsureness of it all, anyway, is prevalent. I think it's very clear to feel. So at least having some awareness around it is a good thing. And if that comes in the form of meeting up with like-minded people on a regular basis, I mean, I personally like to do it more than just once a month. I'll be totally honest. I think we can do it more than once a month. I think we should do it more than once a month, and I'm sure we will as well, because I think the demand for that is definitely there. There are plenty of people like myself who would love to talk about this topic and develop their thoughts around these topics, the ones that have been hidden from us for decades, since we left school, since we went to school, where we had our opportunity. But of course we were learning then also to trust in authority. Yeah, you know, that's the way forward as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's only a matter of time before things like internet get hit as well, and that sort of thing, and communication via the internet will be very, very tricky. It already is. It already is. You know, but we have to have other options at our disposal, don't we? You know, a plan B and even a plan C. But I'm just sort of waffling on there now. But anyway, so that was going to be my next announcement, that the next Flat Earth Social is Tuesday, the 26th of September at 1900 hours at the Pavilion Arms in Bournemouth. Alex Michael, conspiracy music guru, will be beamed in via Sataloon to have a little chinwag and a couple of drinks in a nice, friendly, social environment and have a bit of a catch-up. So I'm looking forward to that. I've not spoken to him for a while, although we are kind of in touch a little bit, but, you know, it'd be nice to have a nice conversation. And they're the sort of things I like as well. It's, you know, tightening up the group a little bit and, you know, developing that contact giving everyone the opportunity to develop it further with each other. You know, I think it's good. But that is on Tuesday, the 26th of September at 1900 hours in the Pavilion Arms. I shall be there. Do come along. And if you want to get hold of myself, or of course Ian Leahy, who's the main man behind it all, but of course Ian, being a busy man, if you can't reach him, you can reach me if you want to, and I will gladly pass on any messages or be of help in that moment, even if I can, of course. I'll leave what I was going to say. Well, I'll leave my email address in the description below, and otherwise you can find me on Facebook and inbox me, or you can find me on Instagram and inbox me. I just have my name there as my handle name. Yeah. So what else was I going to say there? I've kind of gone a little bit back and forth. No, I don't want to say any more, really, because my mind was a little bit all over the place, because I felt like there was so much to talk about, especially with the date being the way it was. And for some reason, it came on me a little bit today. It doesn't normally. It's not sort of something I think of like a commemorative moment or anything like that. It's not kind of my thing, but I suppose it didn't help with me going online, obviously. But the point is, yeah, it made me realize a lot of things. And it was definitely the beginning of me learning how to, A, open my eyes, and B, learn how to carry out research correctly and not deem secondary information as proof. Most certainly not, which is what a lot of people are doing. So that is the moral of this video, really, that if we're going to be doing research, and I'm talking to myself more than anyone else because it's very easy to get comfortable around it and complacent, then we need to nail it. I need to nail it. You know, if somebody wants to argue the point with me about the shape of the earth and how gravity holds water to a molten iron core of a spinning water ball hurtling through an ever-expanding violation of all natural laws, a vacuum of space, then I would necessarily, in that moment, ask them, well, what about helium? Or what about rain clouds? For example. You know, these are basics that we knew at school, that not everything gets drawn to a center of Earth. There were our first red flags right there. All we've done is, at a later date in our lives, is revisited them. And now we're not taking no for an answer. In fact, on the contrary, now it's you prove your claim that we're on a ball, because I guarantee you cannot prove that. We've never had any proof that we live on a spinning ball. There are no photographs of Earth from space, from an impossible region called space. There's no video footage from space. But there we are, most of us, not me, thankfully, anymore, but most of us, believing in that and buying into it. So, research it and you'll know otherwise. Anyway, right, I'm going to leave it there because it is turned out to be a little bit longer than I wanted to. I kind of waffled on a little bit there, but I hope you kind of got the gist of what I was kind of saying. And most importantly, the announcement of the next Flat Earth Social, of course. That is important. An environment whereby you can sit with friends, like-minded people, and talk about any topic you want, and you ain't going to be judged, and you ain't going to be met with hostilities through ignorance, laziness, complacency, and all the rest of it, which is what we're unfortunately surrounded with on a daily basis and confronted with on a daily basis. On that note, everybody behind me says hi. You know, there's a proper conference going on there. So we've got our pondering ape, Larry, of course, and the sleeping masses. You know, you can see there's a lot to ponder there. So they all say hi, but they're quite quiet. They're always busy thinking. All right. On that note, enjoy the rest of your week. I hope you all don't work too hard and don't do whatever it is you're doing too hard. Give yourself a break and all that. Pace yourselves, you know, and I will see you all soon. Some of you sooner. Until then, take it easy and ta-ta for now.